Welcome back to the Aware AI Brief. This is our monthly video series looking to address kind of real life, practical, tangible questions or topics as it relates to AI governance. And that all comes from you, the listener. So as I start every one of these episodes, encouraging you, both those that have sent in questions and comments, and if you have not and you desire to do so, please send them our way, and that's kind of what fuels this discussion here. But as always, I'm joined by Walter Haydock, founder of StackAware. How are we doing today, Walter?
Good, Cameron. Good to see you.
Good, very good. Surviving the summer months here. It's kind of wild to think that like we're last week of July already. I know
I
we say
know.
that every time the calendar comes around. I feel like a broken record, but yeah, man, seems like the summer went quick.
It did. It did. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. We've still got August ahead, but in New Hampshire, it
yeah.
starts getting cold in August.
Oh, that's true, right? Yeah, yeah. So it changes quicker. Yeah, where I'm at,
Yeah.
we're in the heat for a little bit.
I bet.
So,
I bet. Yeah.
but today I want to dive into some of the questions and comments that have come our way here this month. So, let's without further ado, let's get into some of these questions that you, the listener, might have presented. So question number one here was how does oh, that is the wrong. You know what? I think I'm in the wrong file here. I apologize.
Yeah. No worries. I set up the wrong live stream. I duplicated the live stream. So
This
I'm
is
going to, yeah.
yeah. This is just to prove that it's
This is
live.
real. This is
Yeah.
real. We're
This
doing this
is
live. Yes.
this is not an act.
This is not,
Those
yeah.
would be that would be a redo of. Is there that I was looking at June? Was there anything in June that you wanted to redo? I was on the wrong one. He's like, actually, edit.
I guess we
All
could
right.
talk about it again. Yeah.
Yeah, right. See if make sure the answers line up. Question number one from this month. Illinois has a newish law, the Artificial Intelligence Safety Measures Act. I know I've seen you post about it, talk about it a little bit. So they define something as catastrophic risk. And so the question that came in was more along the lines of does defining risk that way, is that a measurable process? And if so, does that improve accountability?
Overall, I think it's good to define risk and outcomes in quantitative terms. And I think that Illinois did do this in SB 315. They said that catastrophic risk includes anything that results in death or serious injury to 50 or more people or $1 million in property damage, which I mean, yeah, it would be a tragedy, but I wouldn't call that catastrophic. I mean, that happens every day. It'd be bad if an AI system or AI model caused that level of damage, and that would certainly be unprecedented. But that's
Sure.
that's a relatively low threshold, I'd say. Although, if you're getting to that point with an AI system, then things are probably ramping up quickly. So it might make sense to
Yeah.
trigger some preventive or some reactive or yeah, some reactive controls.
Yeah.
Some yeah. So overall, I think it's a good approach. The law has gotten some feedback, from industry groups. They are not super thrilled about it for obvious reasons. It applies more regulation to them. It's state specific, and I think probably the biggest issue is that some folks have raised is the kind of external audit requirement
Mm.
is not perfectly defined. There's no code of practice for auditing a frontier framework. So I think that's true. With that said, Stackware has proposed, using ISO 42001 internal audit plus some additional controls focused on SB 315 as a way to meet that requirement. And, I think it's certainly doable. I don't think it's that crazy a thing to get done. And,
Sure.
we're standing by to assist with that for any hyperscalers who need some assistance.
Yeah. 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 Like you said, maybe not that crazy of a lift, but to echo your point, if you feel like it is, reach out for sure.
One
The next,
thing,
go
one
ahead.
interesting thing I thought in there was that it did exempt from the definition of catastrophic risk otherwise lawful activities of the U.S. federal government.
Mm,
So
okay,
if the U.S. military has an AI weapon that does that level of damage,
sure,
it's not covered under the law.
not right. That is an
Although I
interesting
guess I'm not
distinction.
sure how that would be happening, like in the
In
state of
Illinois,
Illinois. That
yeah,
would be probably. I probably don't want like a police AI that could wipe out 50 people at a time.
right,
That's even if it's under control, I still don't
right,
like that
yeah,
idea.
yeah. The need for that application already
Yeah,
raises major
yeah,
red flags.
yeah. There are a lot of questions raised.
Yeah, yeah. Glad you have all the questions. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, that's good. That's good. Worth pointing out for sure. The next question is more discussion I've seen for from online about AI governance, and that's this idea of principles based governance. So some of our just kind of discourse I've seen online. Some argue that principle based governance gives organizations needed adaptability. Easy for you to say, adaptability as the technology evolves, while others say it becomes kind of a way to delay concrete controls. I don't know if you've seen this or heard it discussed among people as far as to you or kind of getting your input on it, but where do you land on that term or just that general application?
I think you can have principles based AI governance at a high level that is also not vague.
Mm,
So, a big debate that I see is people saying, oh, well, your policies should be high level, they shouldn't be super specific. I would say, yes, that's true, but they shouldn't be vague. And there's a difference here. You can be high level and you can say data owners are accountable for anything that a system does or does not do. That I would consider to be high level, but specific.
yeah,
Because if something bad happens, we look at the data owner and say, hey,
right.
what happened? What happened here? There's
Yeah,
no pointing a finger saying, well, application AI applications should be supervised to make sure that human oversight is properly applied. That is high level and vague. That doesn't really
right.
tell you who to look to if something goes wrong. So I think if you're using principles to guide your AI governance, that's a good idea. And I think you can have policies that are high level while at the same time not being vague. They should also specify and assign responsibility for
Mm,
developing specific procedures. So the CISO must develop a risk assessment process for AI systems. The data privacy officer must develop a privacy impact assessment process that takes into account AI system considerations, so on and so forth. And then those people need to execute their responsibilities to make sure that they're managing risk effectively.
yeah. Yeah, and I would say even beyond the fact that you're high level, shouldn't be vague or can be specific. I would say that it probably should be specific in the sense of unless underneath that high level you get into it, the specifics, and you don't want repetition. I've seen a lot of good examples of that, a lot of not so great examples of that too, where that high level terminology is an area to be specific, especially when you, as you alluded to, the assigning of responsibilities, roles and responsibilities, to have direction. The high level should not just be preamble. It should be giving direction of some sort for you as well.
Yeah, and you can have a high level definition of covered personnel, for example.
Yeah.
Is that employees? Is that contractors? If it's contractors, do the contractors know that they've signed up for this
Right.
policy?
Right.
Did they sign up for this policy? Because you can say until you're blue in the face that this policy applies to contractors, but if their contract doesn't say it does, then it doesn't.
Right.
It might in your mind.
Yeah, I was
So
gonna say on one
being
end of it.
yeah
Yeah.
yeah it might yeah it applies in the least useful way and
Yeah.
yeah
Yeah.
in your mind. So yeah, being you can be specific and high level at the same time.
Sure. Absolutely. The next one was kind of a question that came up, I think, based primarily from the Google DeepMind CEO that had recently called for a new standards body, kind of matching the financial industry regulatory authority or things from the financial industry, in order to be able to test model releases and kind of develop best practices. So I guess maybe just to enlighten the audience, what problem is that trying to solve? And is that something that you think is a good idea? Or as we look at trying to be practical here on Aware AI Brief, like is that a real tangible way to solve the problem it's trying to solve?
There's been a lot of talk recently about developing national level AI safety regulation. The Trump administration has put forward a variety of, in my opinion, conflicting ideas about exactly what this means. The director of the National Economic Council discussed an FDA for artificial intelligence. And then the special advisor to the president or special assistant to the president for AI and crypto described an FDA for AI as fake news soon after that. So it's a little difficult to understand exactly what's going on here. Then
Yep.
the administration in June released an executive order creating a voluntary program for safety evaluation, specifically saying it did not create any sort of licensing arrangement as a FINRA would. Maybe it
Mm-hmm.
is because the FDA analogy has been so muddled and kind of beaten up at this point that maybe we're just changing from pharmaceuticals to to financial
Yeah.
services as
Yeah.
our reference set. So, I mean, I think in general it makes sense to have standards at the national level. I've always advocated for a national AI governance law that takes into account things like AI safety, that consolidates all these requirements, that takes laws like SB 315, preempts them and says, hey, here's the national standard for AI safety, so that companies don't need to look at every single jurisdiction to decide what they're going to do. And FINRA, I don't necessarily think that's like the perfect way to do it. I'm always suspicious of when the government sets up private organizations to enforce
Yeah.
standards and to do things like that. I view that as kicking the can by the government. That's policymakers saying, we don't really want to
Sure.
get too involved in this. We want to outsource that.
Yeah.
And then it removes political accountability from whatever standards are being put out there. I mean, you want to get really kind of existential. We could talk about the Federal Reserve. Like, is that part of the government?
Mm.
Depends whom you ask, depends what context. The president appoints the governors but he can't remove them. And it's all kind of very
Yeah.
strange to me. Whereas the FDA, the commissioner of the FDA is an officer appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate.
Yeah.
No questions there.
Yeah.
President doesn't like what he's doing, boom, he's gone. Actually, the
Mm.
FDA commissioner did just resign recently, a
Right.
couple weeks ago.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's the right move. And there's a lot of talk about undue political influence and things like that in independent agencies. I mean, this is more of a political opinion
Mm-hmm.
on my part, but I worked on Capitol Hill. I've served in 2 out of 3 branches of government. My feeling is that the concept of an independent agency is unconstitutional, which actually the Supreme Court just said it was. So the current prevailing law is on my side here. But also, just as citizens, we don't really want these autonomous bodies that we can't really get rid of, being in charge of commerce and development. I want somebody who a senator can call in front of a hearing and say, hey,
Yeah.
why are you doing this? I want somebody that the president can fire if the president doesn't like what he or she is doing.
Yeah.
Sounds harsh, but otherwise, if the president and Congress aren't in charge, who is in charge?
Mm-hmm.
That's my thinking. So I don't necessarily love the FINRA type of approach. I think actually the FDA is a better approach
Sure.
for what it's worth, even though that concept has gotten beaten up. Probably not as oppressive as the FDA has become, because I think we've gotten some we've lost out on some innovation in the biotech space based
Sure.
on the FDA's approval process and things like that. So maybe a lighter weight FDA approach could make sense. And only in the most risky cases would there be government intervention or pre-clearance required.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, you bring up some great points as far as that kind of that model and trying to figure out. I do think even an FDA type of regulation probably. I mean, I think it took the FDA a bit to get to the things that
Yep.
that we might look at as far as flaws. So there's a way to kind of rewrite even that structure. But as you were talking, I was just thinking like the biggest thing about this whole idea or concept is that accountability structure, right? Like it is. I think that could be a glaring, well, it could just be a very important piece of the puzzle when it comes to some sort of new standards body or what that looks like specifically is what you were saying. The ability to be able to have someone stand before a Senate hearing, the ability to be able to keep accountability actionable, like to be able to actually hold someone accountable and to have that structure in place. I think if this a little bit hypothetical, like where could we go from here? But I think that's something that has to be part of the consideration for sure. For sure. Okay, this question came in as well. The people writing governance policy are often not the people who understand the underlying processes and controls. Is that something that you see as a potential issue for organization? And how does that disconnect or undermine governance efforts and practice? So kind of the people writing the policy, maybe not the people that are quite as hands-on, and is that an issue and kind of why?
It's a huge problem if those who are writing policies do not understand how controls would be applied in the real world. And I'll give you an example. In the realm of software development and product development, there used to be the role, or there still is, but less so these days. There was the role of product manager who would understand the business requirements, translate them into technical requirements for developers who would code up the application. Increasingly, we're seeing those two roles compress because of the speed of AI development. So a product manager can go from idea to working prototype very quickly. He or
Mm,
she doesn't need to write specifications and then, have the development team whip it up and then check it and make sure it fits. That can all happen in the course of an afternoon. So I think we're going to see the same thing with GRC engineering, governance, risk, and compliance engineering. The what I call GRC flat professionals, those who don't have the engineering capabilities or chops, are really going to need to learn how to develop those in order to implement these controls in an actionable way. Because the idea of having a pie in the sky policy where no one knows how to implement it, even the person writing the policy doesn't know how to implement it, I think that's going to be less and less valuable if it was ever valuable to begin with. And I think at best, those types of policies are used as a retroactive enforcement mechanism to say, hey, you didn't follow the policy. We're going to
sure,
discipline
sure.
you because you didn't do XYZ. That is not the best way to approach things. In a high functioning organization, somebody makes a mistake, you immediately issue a correction. You block an inappropriate action as it's happening using
Mm,
technical controls. If that person keeps making the same mistake, then maybe it's not a mistake, maybe it's a pattern. Then you're logging all these events, and then eventually you move into the disciplinary realm. So I think that's the right way to implement controls, is to have a spectrum, and you need a technical enforcement mechanism for that. So increasingly we're going to see GRC teams become true GRC engineers, and it's going to be an elite profession, and there are going to be fewer of them, but I think it's going to be more effective for organizations going forward.
sure, sure. Yeah, and definitely effective and to your point necessary, right? Like for to keep up with kind of the rapid scaling for sure. Um, if you could fix one problem or process in typical AI governance, we'll say tomorrow, because a couple hours left of the day, we won't put that pressure on you. But if you could fix it by tomorrow, what would it be and why?
Asset inventory would be the first thing that I would fix when it comes to AI governance, because even the most highly functioning organizations don't have great asset inventory. All their data is scattered across various different sources. They don't know what applications are being mothballed. there's no single place you can go in. The CISO can go in and say, okay, how many endpoints do I have exposed to the internet right now? How many virtual machines are spinning? How many Bedrock instances are going? It's very challenging to get that single source of truth for
Mm,
even small organizations. And I get it. It's difficult. I understand. I personally maintain the stack aware asset inventory for a very small company, and it can be challenging sometimes, but it is possible to do. And that would be the number one thing that I would fix tomorrow.
nice. I like. So yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, yeah,
Let's
easy,
fix it just
easy.
like that.
Hey, stack aware helps with asset
For
inventory.
sure.
We plug
For sure.
into GRC platforms like Vanta or Drata. We plug into your cloud providers like AWS, like Azure, and we can pull down your assets from there and have a standardized list. And then also we can bounce the risks against the assets, which actually I think is a key thing that's missing from a lot of the governance risk compliance
Yeah.
platforms. You look at these example risks and it's like, you know, somebody accidentally releases sensitive data. That's the risk. You know, what's the
Hmm.
asset impacted? The sensitive data. Like we need to be more specific than
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it this database that has this protected health information in it that is going to be targeted with this vulnerability? Like that's the
Right.
level of specificity you need to get into to have an actionable risk register.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that's what it's going to look like. It's not going to look like an alert that says somebody took this. Yeah. It's going to be
Right.
much more
Yeah.
specific. Yeah.
Yeah, hackers are not asking ChatGPT to write an exploit to like
Right.
make a person leak sensitive data by accident. They're
Yeah.
being much more specific.
Yeah.
They're saying,
Much more
"Hey,
specific.
write an exploit for this CVE in this
Yeah.
environment."
Yeah. Yeah. That's really good point. The next little part here, kind of to wrap up our episode today. I like to come up with these kind of strange segments, if you would. Like I said, I've blamed my sports radio listening for decades and decades for the little gambits. But this one I'm going to call "Explain Yourself." So, not necessarily that sounds way more accusatory that I desire it to be, but some things I've seen, either a post online or maybe there were some people that had questions, kind of follow up in comments, things like that. But just kind of more of a verbal platform to explain some things and topics you've written on. So the first one is post that you had on AI pen testing, and one of the first key um, items you had brought up was AI enabled authorization bypass. So maybe more of like a definition for that, but yeah, what do you got for that one?
AI enabled authorization bypass happens when you architect a feature in a way that accidentally overrides your intended authorization model. So one of the most common things that I see during AI pen tests is if there's an application that's doing retrieval augmented generation against a data set, if you use the service account with essentially unlimited permissions to pull the data from the database, the end user may not necessarily be authorized to see all the data that's being accessed through the RAG process.
Hmm.
So essentially you've jumped your authorization boundary by accident using AI. And this is it's a very preventable thing. You need to make sure that you're retrieving the data using the permissions of the user who's eventually going to see them. It's very preventable, but I see it all the time. And I'm sure I will continue to see it.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I'd seen that one in that post, and I was like, that'd be a good one to highlight and allow people, and I say people, myself too, to understand the full concept. It's for other people. It's definitely not for my own education. Um, the next one was a post on GRC consulting. So you were talking about in that post the GRC consulting service that just comes and leaves you with a 200-page PDF and says good luck. And then you had listed on there, allow StackAware to build the machine, right? So I guess build the machine, maybe exposition on that.
One of the worst things that a consultant can come in and do is just drop a PDF document that is meant to be read and consumed and implemented and then disappearing. And I bump into a lot of folks who've kind of been on the receiving end of that type of treatment from a consultant. And I take a different approach. What we do is we build repeatable systems for our customers to make sure that they can run the machine when Stackaware is gone. The whole point is not to build a reliance on a consultant who comes in every year and then kind of reissues the same recommendations in a different way.
Sure.
The point is to give our customers the ability to stand on their own and then supplement them with data, with expert advice once the implementation is through. And we strive to, build on the customer's environment. We use their GRC platform. We use their, however they want to present data, that type of things. We leverage that to the maximum degree possible. And that's what I meant by, not avoiding the traditional GRC consultant approach.
Yeah. Yeah, building a machine, and honestly, kind of got into that a little bit, talking about GRC engineering versus that kind of flat. I think you called it kind of more flat GRC a
Mhm.
little bit earlier. Just that something that is much more practical, but lives and breathes with your organization as well. Yeah.
Mm.
Okay, last one for this. Explain yourself. You had written your AI governance is a spreadsheet. That's the actual problem.
The way that I approach spreadsheets is they are essentially the front end for information. That's how people could consume them because a lot of people are used to seeing spreadsheets. But almost every spreadsheet that Stackaware ever generates has behind it an API call that's pulling from a database where there's a single source of truth. Everything is versioned, where there's linkage between different data sets. And if you're just using spreadsheets as the source of truth, then you're going to have problems with version control. They're going to be brittle. You're going to have, version final three copy delete me,
Mm-hmm.
being emailed to the auditor, which is not a good look. So to the maximum extent possible, use systems of record. You can use spreadsheets, sparingly. And then if you are going to use them, then use them as a layer on top of a source of truth. So, all the Stackware templates that we put out there, they are compatible with our backend. If you're just downloading them for free, you're not going to get access to our backend data and the updating. That's something we
Sure.
reserve for our customers, but that's an incentive to work with us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, perfect. Perfect. And the last comment I wanted to bring up from this past month, I really liked this one. Somebody had commented on, you have a wonderful video about the complete ISO 42001 certification roadmap video. I highly recommend it, for anyone that is even remotely interested in ISO 42001. It's great detail and delivering there. The comment was, anywhere I can get more info. So maybe directional advice there.
Yeah, the best place to go after watching the complete guide to ISO 42001 in 2026 would be managementsystem.ai, which is Stackaware's 5-day email course on ISO 42001. You can get more information in a written format, and it's a good reference for you if you're building your AI management system.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. Well, that's what I had for today as far as the questions that came in, Walter. And I appreciate you taking the time to sit here and answer these and discuss with myself. Thank you again to all that have continued to or in this last month have contributed to the questions and comments and topics. I was thinking about it in preparation for this, that I think with it's important not just to have questions, but to be asking kind of new questions, to be having new conversation as this technology continues to advance week in, week out. If we're asking the same questions and talking about it the same way, we're probably falling behind a little bit, and it's tough to keep up with everything. But my advice is always just keep asking new questions, keep finding new topics to discuss when it comes to this. That'll only kind of help us grow and self-educate as a collective, really. So appreciate all the questions, appreciate everybody's input, and thank you for listening. We'll catch you again next month on Aware AI Brief.
Thanks, everyone.